Right, in this lesson we are learning about energy transfers and transformations. Here is our subject matter. It is all from topic 2. All right, energy is needed by all organisms in an ecosystem to do any kind of work. And when I say work, I mean it could be digestion, repair, growth, reproduction, respiration, whatever, right? And the majority of all energy originates from the sun and it's converted to chemical potential energy by producers. Animals then turn it into ATP, and then we can do all those types of work. Now, once the conversion of light energy to chemical energy takes place through the producers of the autotrophs, it allows other organisms to access it. Energy transformations occur when energy changes form. So in this case, we're talking the light energy turns into chemical energy, or the chemical energy can then turn into heat energy once it's been consumed. Energy transfers, however, occur when the energy is moved from one organism in the same form. So if we're talking about chemical energy in biomass and another organism coming along and eating that organism, will also then collect chemical energy, but it will be transferred to that organism. Now, energy flows through an ecosystem through the various organisms' interactions. We're talking like predation, obviously, consumption, death, and even decomposition. Now, these relationships are represented in many ways like food chain, food web, or even pyramids. Now, food chains are simplistic linear chains, and they show feeding relationships where an organism is being consumed by another at a higher trophic level. And this repeats for a number of different trophic levels, right? Now, the arrows here represent the energy or the energy and the matter flowing in the interaction. So, for example, in that cottontail rabbit and carrot plant situation, the rabbit is eating the plant, meaning the energy or the plant's energy is flowing into that next trophic level. Food chains only show one possible energy flow pathway. They are very simplistic, and therefore they are actually limited in length because there's not enough energy available beyond 4 to 5 trophic levels. Now, food webs take the same principle as a food chain and apply it to a more complex set of organism interactions where different organisms are involved. Food webs show multiple pathways for energy flow, and each feeding level, still a trophic level, an organism can actually be a part of many trophic levels depending on the complexity of the food web. So in this case, the kingfisher is simultaneously a secondary consumer, a tertiary consumer, and a quaternary consumer, depending on what it is eating, and we could boil it down to a simple food chain. So obviously these are really complex interactions, but they give ecosystems more stability and sustainability. So the arrows are still representing that energy flow. For example, in this case, the algae is being eaten by the prawn, so the energy from the algae moves into the prawn. All right, energy pyramids can depict a number of different things depending on what you want at the time. So they can show the relative amount of organisms. So if we're talking like an actual numbers one there versus how much biomass is in that organism versus the actual energy being measured and potentially lost to the environment. So an ecological pyramid illustrates the decline in energy and biomass as it moves up the food chain. And you can see that really clearly here. So for example, we might be talking only like 10 trees, but their biomass is quite substantial and enough to look after or sustain a large number of flies in that first level of feeding. So it can give a broader picture of when an imbalance might occur, and so predictions can be made about the flow-on effects of changes in populations and things like that, based on drought or disease or whatever. So pyramids depict still simple food chains. So you can actually see all the trophic levels. And if you compare pyramids based on organism number, you can see that the varying sources support different numbers of consumer trophic levels. So if we're talking forest, we've got 200 trees versus 1.5 million pieces of grass or plants, These ones are very, very clear. So only a small amount of algae. If we're talking, this one's grams of biomass per square meter. Very little, but it can sustain quite a large first trophic level there. So now, not all energy from the sun is able to create energy by producers, right? So firstly, a large proportion of the heat and light energy radiating from the sun is reflected or absorbed by the atmosphere to warm it, okay? The amount which we reflected or absorbed depends on where you are in the earth, basically, right? So due to the tilt of the planet, the ground covering, so Antarctic ice, for example, can reflect quite a lot. Only around 1 to 5% of the energy ends up actually being used by photosynthetic organisms. So it's not really a lot. So, when we're talking conversion into chemical energy, there's not really a lot being converted. Around 95% of the light energy that does reach the plant will be reflected or absorbed to warm the planet. So again, the plants aren't using very much that actually gets through to them. Not all energy which is part of the organism is directly passed on to the next trophic level, all right? So the organism consuming it. On average, about 10% of the biomass or the energy available is converted into biomass at the next trophic level. The remaining 90% is either not utilised, so not digested or lost as waste, or it's lost as heat energy through cellular respiration. So remember, the biomass is the energy in this case. And if we're talking, all right, this is the amount of sun that comes into the ecosystem, the primary producers can only use that much of it and only that much of the energy. So only 10% of the energy flows up the food chain. Now, the efficiency of energy being transferred can be calculated as a percentage efficiency. In this particular case, we've got a trophic level. This is how much energy is coming in, but only this is coming out. The rest is lost due to waste or due to heat. So in this case, only a 25% productivity there, which isn't really very much. Only 25% of the production of biomass can be converted to go to the next trophic level. So we talk gross versus net primary productivity. So the gross primary productivity is the total amount of energy captured by the organisms, so captured by photosynthesis in this case. And then the net primary productivity is how much is actually passed on. Right, the amount of energy available from the producers to be passed on to the next trophic level or the consumer. All right, in your sample data test, you actually have a really good question on this, and it outlines the amount of energy in kilojoules per meter squared per year flowing into each trophic level. So I want you to take some time to go and have a read of that. The questions that come along with that say determine the gross productivity of producers, calculate the respiration of herbivores, identify which trophic level has the highest percentage energy transfer. So you can see here there's some missing numbers and it will require you to actually do some calculations. Funny that, because our word calculate is there in our subject matter. Okay.